The two Star Wars Legends novels, The Labyrinth of Evil and Yoda Dark Rendezvous, is an interesting study on the relationship between Dooku, Yoda, and Sidious. Over the course of the two books, Dooku makes some shocking discoveries about not only his new master in Sidious, but his old one in the Grandmaster Yoda. In Labyrinth of Evil, he's shocked by just how similar the two of them really are, and in Dark Rendezvous, and even later in Labyrinth of Evil, Dooku believes that Yoda has trained in the dark side of the Force, and while he doesn't believe that he's turned exclusively to the dark side of the Force, he does think that his master is far more acquainted with it than he would lead on, the same way that Palpatine is far more acquainted with the Jedi in the way of the Senate. Dooku realizes this strange similarity between the Grand Master and Sidious, realizing the game that the Avatar of the Light and the Avatar of the Dark are playing is far beyond any one of the pawns that they control. Dooku grows the assumption that Yoda is far less truthful than he originally believed. These thoughts and concerns all arose originally during the duel on Geonosis, where there is not only a battle in the physical, but the mental as well, as Yoda and Dooku ferociously analyze one another. It is here where Dooku falls under the assumption that Yoda has been trained in the dark side. He's meeting Dooku's newfound power too perfectly, something Dooku did not expect. Yoda is mysteriously fortified against this growing power that Dooku now wields, and this has Dooku somewhat scared. He's not scared of Yoda because of the light side power that he possesses, but rather the fact that he is unwavering, and that Yoda is even shockingly comfortable. This is what plants the seed in Dooku's mind, that Yoda has studied the dark side. But it isn't until the Labyrinth of Evil that we get confirmation of this directly from Yoda. And while it is revealed that Yoda's studies of the dark side are not as in-depth as Dooku believed, Yoda does, in a roundabout way, confirm that he has studied the dark side far more than most Jedi ever have or would have ever been allowed to. So how is it that we know this? Well, Acolytes of the Force, come with us today as we open up another holocron. First though, we have had a terrible vision. Many of the Acolytes visiting our archives have not yet subscribed to our order. So if you've been enjoying the daily Star Wars uploads, reach out and force crush that subscribe button. It is your destiny. In Yoda Dark Rendezvous, Dooku famously tempts Yoda with the dark side, holding the fact that he could protect his friends, that he could indulge in all of the fear and the pain that he has felt over the course of the Clone Wars, and that with that fear, he could secure the galaxy forever in safety. Dooku realizes that he cannot tempt Yoda with things such as power, so rather, he dangles in front of him the opportunity to save his friends. But it is in Labyrinth of Evil where we get our full confirmation. As Yoda is meditating upon the Force on Coruscant, he senses that the Clone Wars is drawing to an end, but specifically, he is brought back to the memory of his first duel with Dooku on Geonosis. The Grand Master has desperately attempted to turn his old friend back to the light side, but has failed. But this is not what is troubling the Grand Master. It is something else. In his solidarity, Yoda admits to himself that he has in fact studied the dark side of the Force before, but more in the context of a historical setting rather than embracing the dark side. However, Yoda does admit internally that he has looked extensively into the lore and the practice of the dark side, if only to understand his enemies more closely. In this dark, vulnerable moment, Yoda admits that what he has done is dangerous, but also necessary, needing to look into the past of the Sith so that he can identify the dark side in the Jedi, the ones that he would have to train. And although Yoda had dreaded the day where the Sith would return, he needed to be prepared if they ever did. But now the Sith were on their doorstep, and Yoda discovered something shocking, something that he had never learned in his studies of the dark side, turning through the pages of the ancient Sith. Yoda's mind again flickers back to Dooku, as he had admitted to Dooku that he had extensive knowledge over the history of the dark side, this causing Dooku to question whether or not Yoda had at one point embraced it. But Yoda had not, even though his former apprentice had questioned his resolve. At first, Yoda had studied the dark side in an attempt to better understand the pain of his enemy, but now, all he was left with was a pit in his stomach. Because he knew the dark side, he knew just how special and unique Sidious was. He saw something in Darth Sidious, a man to his current knowledge he had never met, something that caused this Dark Lord to deviate from the rest in a way that was greatly troubling. Yoda realizes just how long the Sith have been lying in wait. and he realizes that the dark side masters that came before Sidious were unworthy, and Yoda understands the magnitude. The other Sith rarely acted selflessly. It is only until this Darth Sidious made his way into the galaxy that the Sith had decided to make their critical move. To Yoda, not only had the Sith been lying in wait for someone that could wield the dark side, but they had been lying in wait for someone to be its pure instrument, to be its literal will, something that no other Sith Lord in the lineage that Yoda had studied had achieved. The Sith had been lying in wait for this one Sidious, and now they were ready to strike, confident in Sidious's ultimate power. But there was something more. Yoda again thinks back to Geonosis, concerned that Dooku revealed to Obi-Wan Kenobi that Sidious held great power within the Senate and within the Republic, and that the Jedi and the Senate were clueless. This news shocked Yoda, not because he thought it was impossible, but because the Clone Wars was nearing an end, and they had no leads on the true identity of this Sidious. Yoda became aware just how powerful Sidious was. The dark side itself, the Sith, had awaited his arrival for centuries now, something Yoda only knew because he had studied dark side texts. Not only did Yoda not know the identity of Darth Sidious, but he didn't even know the extent of power that he commanded in the Senate. 3 years had passed, and the Jedi had discovered nothing. It was because of this that Yoda acknowledged that the Sith Lord was indeed more powerful than anything he had ever come into contact with before, writings or in his own personal life. This Darth Sidious was a new being entirely, a new type of Sith Lord, one that Yoda admitted that he was utterly ill-prepared to face. Yoda would admit that the Clone Wars had grown far beyond his sight, that he didn't even know the truth of why the Clone Wars had broke out entirely, and that he could not see an end to the conflict. Not that it would never end, simply that it was beyond his comprehension at this point. But it was not beyond the comprehension of the Sith, and this is something that Yoda also knew. Yoda knew that the Dark Lord was around the Senate, meaning that he was around the Jedi, and yet Yoda found himself incapable of weeding the Dark Lord out, and in a rare moment, Yoda grows extremely frustrated. The fate of the Jedi, the fate of the galaxy, is no longer in control of the Grand Master, and he knows it, as he comes to the realization that it hasn't been in his control for many hundreds of years. But anyway, my friends, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on the evolution of Yoda's character from Dark Rendezvous to the Labyrinth of Evil, and even from Attack of the Clones to the Labyrinth of Evil? What are your thoughts on this massive reveal, and the fact that Yoda admits that he has studied the history and the texts of the dark side in order to better understand his enemy? Do you believe that this was a mistake on Yoda's behalf, or was this extremely intelligent? Was there any part of Yoda who could have stopped Sidious? As always, my friends, thank you so much for visiting the channel today, and may the Force be with you.